Sebastian, the genius in the lab, with an ego the size of the Empire State Building, was trying to create a revolutionary formula on his computer. The problem? The experiment failed. The solution? He took a not-so-scientific peek at the gorgeous neighbor next door, rewrote the formula, and boom, it worked. Excited, he calls his colleague Linda, telling her she'd better start prepping his Nobel Prize speech. Spoiler, things weren't going to end quite like that. The next day, Linda wakes up Matthew, her lab partner and secret lover. They get ready and head to the lab, where Sebastian unlocks the door with his fingerprint and password. Inside, the scientists are playing around with invisible animals that only show up through thermal imaging. A gorilla named Isabel is agitated, and Matthew tries to calm her down, only to get a zombie movie-worthy bite. Isabel escapes and becomes the lab's own invisible Godzilla. Sebastian manages to soothe her, but Sarah, the veterinarian, isn't thrilled about injecting an untested serum. The result? Isabel nearly dies, is brought back with the defibrillator, and becomes visible again. A week later, Sebastian presents the project to the Pentagon, but lies, claiming they still can't reverse the invisibility process. Linda and Matthew are like, "What the F?" but say nothing. The reason for the lie? Sebastian wants to secretly start human trials. Matthew is nervous, but Sebastian hits him with the classic, "Relax, it's gonna be epic," and he announces he'll be the first test subject himself. On the big day, Sebastian ignores all warnings and injects himself with the serum. At first, nothing happens until he starts convulsing and turning partially invisible. After a tense few minutes, he completely disappears and passes out. When he wakes up 17 hours later, he finds he can't blink because, well, no more visible eyelids. He starts pulling pranks on his colleagues, especially Sarah and Linda, quickly crossing the line from funny to creepy. The team tries to reverse the process but fails, so Sebastian stays invisible. They make him a silicone mask, and side note, I wouldn't have let this guy leave the lab. I'd have put 20 cameras on him and slapped a GPS tracker to his back. Naturally, he breaks the rules and sneaks out to his apartment, realizing he can do terrible things without being seen, and unfortunately, he does. Linda suspects something, but he comes up with a lousy excuse. Days later, tensions rise. Sebastian starts tampering with security cameras to make it look like he's in the lab when he's actually out spying on Linda and Matthew. In the lab, he kills the test dog. And here's the golden movie rule: never harm an animal. Sarah suspects him, but the cameras prove he was in bed. The group decides to report him to their boss, Dr. Kramer, but Sebastian, now full villain mode, drowns Kramer. When Linda and Matthew discover the lab's phone lines and internet have been cut, they realize they're trapped. Sebastian begins an invisible killing spree, taking out Carter, Sarah, and Frank in increasingly brutal ways, including a good old-fashioned crowbar. Matthew gets knocked out, and he and Linda are locked in the freezer. Here's a clever bit. Linda improvises a tool using a defibrillator as a magnet. Sebastian sets bombs to blow up the lab, but Linda escapes, grabs a flamethrower, and goes after him. She manages to burn him, but he still tries to kill her. Matthew shows up to help, and Sebastian gets electrocuted when he grabs a metal fence. They think it's over, but nope. He reappears on the emergency stairs, fighting Linda and trying to throw her off. In the struggle, she releases the elevator, sending Sebastian straight down into the fire. Crispy bacon, well done. Linda and Matthew, exhausted, walk out of the burning building and finally breathe a sigh of relief. This 2000 movie used over 560 different digital effects to create the invisibility transitions, cutting edge for its time. Personally, I would never have let Sebastian be the first human test subject. I'd have run way more animal trials and taken far more precautions before any human attempt. And I find it fascinating how the film blends sci-fi with psychological suspense, exploring not just the physical effects of invisibility, but how it can completely corrupt a person's morals. And if you were invisible for a whole month, could you keep your ethics intact,
or would you end up like Sebastian? Drop your answer in the comments. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next video.